Are you aware of the power of fallibility? Well, you will be by the end of this video. It can definitely up your humor game. I'm about to interview an expert on the topic, but first, let's watch this 4-second intro. Have you ever wondered what a development executive actually does? Yeah, me too. So I looked it up. Turns out their job is to find great material for film and TV, scripts, novels, short stories, even news articles. And they help shape those into shows and movies we can all watch. Basically, they're the treasure hunters of Hollywood. Today I want to talk about the F and the draft method. It's something a little different, fallibility. You know, being wrong, messing up, not having your act together, the stuff that makes us human, and honestly, funny. And it actually makes us funny in our day-to-day with little or no effort. So I thought, who would have a great perspective on that? Maybe someone who's worked with writers, actors, creators, aka the most gloriously fallible people alive. I know, I'm one of them. Today we're going to work with Alex Stein because he's a former development executive who's worked for the past 20 years as a story analyst, story consultant, and script doctor, working extensively with individual writers, production companies, and studios. He is an award-winning writer and filmmaker, multiple Moth Story Slam winner, and author of 3 books, including the recent Echoes of Iceland, a collection of 42 new original myths written and inspired by the East Fjords of Iceland. No, I'm not kidding. Let's welcome him in with some punch-it-up warmth, shall we? Hey, future Alex, applause, please. Thanks, Welcome, Alex Stein. Did I leave anything out or get anything wrong?
Since we're talking about fallibility, you might have mispronounced my name.
Is it Stein?
It's not.
Has it been Stein this whole time?
No.
We're talking about fallibility and the power it has to be comedic and how it can add humor to your life. And what do I say here? Humor heightens, humor helps, and humor is everywhere. I have some questions for you.
I have some answers for you, and hopefully they will align.
Hopefully. Here's my first part of question 1.
Okay.
In your experience developing TV and film and working with individual writers, how does a character's flaws or outright failures affect the audience's connection to them?
That is a great question.
I did good.
Yep. The simple answer is that characters need to be fallible for us to relate to them. If we're starting with a character who already is perfect or nearly perfect, there's not far for them to go. And as a result, we don't care as much about them. We care more about characters who start out down, or maybe start out high and then get kicked down, and then get to come back up, change, and redeem themselves. So automatically, if you have a character who's fallible, the audience is going to like them more. And the fact is, we're all fallible. That's part of what makes us human. If you have someone who is perfect or near perfect, it's much harder to relate to them and to root for them. In any sort of writing, you want to make sure that there's someone who's pulling you into the story and someone that you can root for. That's one of the reasons why there are so few comedies about God, because he, she, they, it are already perfect. So, there's not far to go with that.
And there's plenty of movies that have God in them in some way, but it's not about God.
Right.
Because there's no journey for God to take.
Right. What's much more interesting is someone who is deeply flawed, has a lot to learn, and has a pretty far way to go to becoming better. We all experience that in our own lives.
Can being fallible actually make a story funnier?
Absolutely.
These examples are not pitches that I found or developed.
Mean Girls,
where basically every character is pretty much flawed and fallible, and that leads to most of the comedy.
We like to be able to laugh at ourselves in a safe way. I'm not a big fan of mean-spirited comedy and comedy that punches down, but I am a big fan of comedy that is generous and comedy that punches up. For example, if somebody is perfect, someone at the DMV, that's less interesting than someone at the DMV who thinks they're perfect and is obviously deeply flawed. And that already brings in the possibility of different types of humor.
Let me ask you this. Do you find it can be helpful and or humorous in just a conversation?
Yes. One of the main reasons for that is I think a lot of us go around thinking, oh, I have this big problem, I have this big flaw, and I'm just waiting for people to discover it. If you're presenting your own flaws and your own fallibility, you can use that to make fun of yourself a little bit. And that makes you more relatable to the other person who is probably fallible as well and might even be wondering, oh, is this person that I'm meeting going to discover my flaws? And it's kind of a bonding thing. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to.
I'm going to add this before I ask you the next question, which is when someone is comfortable being fallible with me, I immediately think of them as being a confident person.
I would totally agree with that.
Okay. Was there ever a time when a writer or performer leaned into their own fallibility and it made a pitch or a project or performance more successful than it would have been without the fallibility?
I'm going to say definitely yes. Admitting your own fallibility makes things warmer.
Elf, where Buddy the Elf is deeply flawed and Will Ferrell brings out the maximum comedy from his flaws.
What? I can't go to sleep unless I get tucked in.
I'm going to interrupt you really quickly, Alex, to ask people to like and subscribe. And if you hate this video, I'd also ask you to comment because that helps the algorithm as well.
We often on social media and everywhere else try to present the best possible version of ourselves. And I'm living my best life and I'm doing this and I'm doing that and everyone should celebrate me and blah, blah, blah. A lot of that just isn't true, or at least it's not the whole truth. When we admit to our own fallibility, we open ourselves up to a deeper connection with people, also to a more joyful connection. Whether you're wanting to just add more humor or more joy, admitting your own fallibility is a great way to do it. And the less you pretend that everything is perfect, I think the more you are inviting people in.
I have a very fulfilling life.
And now I am making your silver pants blue.
Inviting people in is so important for humor because it creates that connection. Humor is not just about saying something funny, it's about being able to connect.
Hey, Alex Stein, thank you for coming back and doing this with me. I just realized when you left that there was another question I wanted to ask you. And it's a question that I think will help people who aren't performers or writers, who get nervous or uncomfortable when they think about being fallible in front of people. So my question is, when you're in class, for example, when someone is fallible or vulnerable, how does that affect the other people in the room?
So, first of all, it's a great question. It really can be a bonding thing within the room. Expressing vulnerability and fallibility makes you more open. And what I've seen a lot of times is when someone who's relatively new, they usually have an enormous amount of fear. They'll be reluctant to share things. When they do, inevitably, it is not nearly as bad as whatever nightmare scenario catastrophizing we like to do. What happens when someone expresses that kind of fallibility and vulnerability, that's sort of the most important thing that has to happen. In your normal walking around, non-writing, non-performing life, if you are afraid to express vulnerability, I think people won't connect with you as deeply. Once you do express vulnerability, obviously, some people are jerks and are not going to treat you well, but the majority of people will generally react well to that. It always makes people want to coalesce around each other and want to support each other.
There are a couple of ways that people try to hide their fallibility, right? If someone is sort of nervous and uncomfortable and shy, I recognize that. And I go, no, I get it. We've all felt that. Then there's the kind of people who hide their fallibility by being grandiose, over the top, super confident. Being strong is being confident. When I meet someone like that, I just am suspicious. First of all, my imagination goes crazy. And I'm like, oh, who did you want alive? I don't think that they are hiding a sweet side. Do you see people experience that the way I experienced it? Or do people get curious?
I think it depends. There's some people who definitely experience it like you do, but there are other people who are easily impressed. There's a lot of things that sound more impressive than perhaps they are.
So here's an example of something that I don't love about myself, but that I sort of share openly because I think it is funny and makes me seem fallible. I'm not a big reader. I read, but I'm not a reader. But people love to give me books. I don't tell people I'm a little bit dyslexic. I'm just going to take it as a compliment that they give me books because they think I'm smart.
Mhm.
I feel like that is more enticing than saying I'm a little bit dyslexic, because that's even more fallible, but it's less relatable.
I can see both sides of that, to be honest. As you know, I am also very dyslexic, and the irony is not lost on me that pretty much everything I do professionally involves reading and writing. I never used to talk about that until about 10 years ago. I'd always sort of thought of it as something to be ashamed of in a way. I realized, oh, wait, in some ways, it's a little bit like a superpower. There are lots of things that I and most dyslexics can't do as well, but there's also a lot of things that dyslexics can do that are either much more difficult or impossible for people who are not dyslexic.
When you started telling people you were dyslexic, what kind of reaction did you get?
I thought of it as a fatal flaw that must be hidden. No one had the reaction that I was afraid of, which was going to be like, oh, I knew it, you're horrible, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's very powerful to let people who are out in their lives know that sometimes you think people are going to respond to you like I thought people would respond to me, because I have a genius sister and a brother with a photographic memory. So I thought if I tell people I read slowly, that it will be a negative experience for me, when in reality it was not. One last question. If someone wanted to take your class or work with you and learn how to tell their stories, where would they reach you?
They would reach me through my website, which is Alex M as in Michael, Stein, STEIN.com.
Okay. Thank you. Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. Thank you for staying till the end. And you know what I'm going to say? You done good.
You done good.
Look at me being fallible. I screwed things up. How about we learn how to use our mouth to form words? How about that?
What do I know?
Bye. That'll do, pig.